Hey everyone. Welcome back, or I should say, welcome me back. Sorry I've been gone so long. I just had surgery almost 3 months ago, and it was a large surgery, so I have been recovering from that, as well as several other things that have been going on in life that have kept me pretty busy. But I wanted to get back and, kind of get back into things, start posting regularly. Now that, I'm recovered, things are, going in the right direction. So you guys will have to excuse me today. I've got this sinus infection that I'm dealing with, so I'm sorry if I, sound and look awful. But I just kind of wanted to touch on, a couple, one thing really that, me and my oldest were talking about. We were cooking dinner the other night, and a friend of theirs is in this polyamorous relationship. And it's a threesome relationship where it's one guy and two women. And, my oldest asks me, she says, I just don't understand how anybody can be happy in one of those kinds of relationships, because it just seems to me like it's always going to be unfair. And, my kids know my views, but I've never pushed my views on them. It's always been their decision to, choose what they want to believe in. They've always been encouraged and taught to find the answers for themselves, find out who they are for themselves. So it's not like I've pushed this, or, I mean, they know how I feel because we've discussed it, but it's not like, I tell them you need to believe what I believe or else. That's not the way we work. Same with religion, same with, politics, any of that. Um, my kids decide what they think is right based on their beliefs and their morals and, who they are as people. Um, so we had the discussion, and I said, well, look, here's the thing. There it can work out, but it's only going to work out for two. There's always going to be a person that ends up unhappy. And that's just the truth. And, I've seen it over and over and over again. I've had clients who are in polyamorous relationships. I've even had, clients that were in large groups of polyamorous relationships. And let me tell you, that was a thing. It's only happened twice where it was more than three. But, I've seen the thruples. And I can tell you that there's only been one that I've seen where it was a non-homosexual relationship, where it was two women and one, or I'm sorry, two men and one woman. I've only seen one of those. I've seen a homosexual relationship between three women, but one of them is always a more masculine figure, or one of them was the masculine figure. And from, my colleagues, that's what I've heard as well. So that's kind of how it plays out. But I've seen a lot of the thruples where it's two women, one man. And I can tell you that one person always ends up feeling less appreciated, less satisfied, uh, just less in every aspect of the word. And, I have them, so how I do it is I have the group come in, and we do a group session, which is an hour, and then we do individual sessions immediately after. So we'll do the group, and then we'll do one, and then one, and then one. So I have to book out a whole day for this because, I mean, it's a big thing. But that's the best way to do it, because if you do it that way, then they don't have time to influence how they're going to react. If you let them go home and talk amongst themselves about what they're going to say in the individual sessions, then they have time to influence each other. That's not the way it needs to work. Each person needs to be completely, on the spot. And that's how you get natural reactions. You don't get natural reactions by letting them stew and think, and how am I going to answer this and this and this. It's unexpected questions, unexpected answers. So, and I can tell you that every single time, I'll get to, one of the women, and it'll be, I just feel like they're the couple and I'm the outsider. I feel like I'm the other woman, even though we're all supposed to be in this relationship. I don't feel like we're all in a relationship. I feel like they're in a relationship and I'm the third wheel. I get it all the time. Because there's always going to be more of an emotional connection between, the guy and one of the women. He's always going to have more of an emotional connection with one over the other. That's just human nature. I mean, in prehistoric times, it used to be that the primary goal was spreading the seed, so one man would have multiple, female partners. That way he could get multiple women pregnant at once and ensure, his lineage. But that's not the way we work anymore. We don't work based off of just instinct and biology anymore. Now we work based off emotional connection and social connections and moral connections and all of these different things. And we build, connections based on, our beliefs and our values and what we want out of life and all of these different things. And it's not just physical and it's not just instinctual anymore. So when you get past the instinctual and the biological, of course, one person is always going to be feeling left out because all that was there was physical attraction. And now the emotional needs aren't being met. And, she keeps telling him she's happy because she wants him to be happy. But he's starting to feel how unhappy she is because she's starting to, become more and more clingy and, try and get him to spend more time with her. And the more she tries to get him to spend more time with her, the less time he wants to spend with her. And so eventually she's kicked out of the relationship and somebody else is brought in. And then it reverses. And the new person ends up being the one he's dedicating the majority of his time to, while the other person starts going through that same thing because, oh, this is new and exciting. And, he's got to develop and nurse this connection now. And that's just how it goes. As far as relationships go, we're not meant to split our attention that way. We can't split our emotions that way. It's never going to be equal. Now, if it's just purely physical and sexual, then that's where it works. If you are only doing it for physical and sexual gratification, that's where it works. But you cannot allow yourself to become emotionally involved. And of course, after a certain amount of time, you are going to become emotionally involved. So there's a time limit on it already. So you can't go into a throuple scenario with the idea that this is going to be a long-lasting relationship. And you certainly don't want to go into a throuple situation with somebody that you think you are in love with. You don't want to do that. Don't put yourself through that. I'm telling you from experience, don't do it. I've had my own experiences with the polyamorous relationship thing, and I'm not going to get into it. It was extremely traumatic, but I can tell you there is no situation where it works out for everybody. There's just not. And you will hear, well, it has to be the right people all the time from people that are in that lifestyle. But here's the thing. Who are the right people? Because in order to not let the fact that the person you love is becoming physically intimate with somebody else bother you, you have to become emotionally detached. And if you have to become emotionally detached, that's not something you want in a relationship. In a relationship, you want complete emotional attachment. You want to be able to know that you can count on this person, heart, mind, body, and soul. And if you have to emotionally detach, that's not a relationship. That's not okay. If you have to emotionally detach, you don't feel safe emotionally. So, for the people who make it work, one of them is lying to themselves and to the others. Always at least one. A lot of times it's both women. I'll see that about 40% of the time, where it's both women that are completely uncomfortable with it, but they tell themselves and their partner that they're okay with it because they know that's what he wants. And they think that they're in love with him, so they're willing to do whatever they think is necessary, because it's always our thought as women, well, if I just do this, he'll see that I'm the one. If I just do this, he'll see that I'm the only one. But in order to be the only one, you have to be the only one. Because you have to remember, while you're doing, this to be the only one, so is the other woman. I mean, you're both doing the same thing. Bending over backwards to make this, this person happy. But are your emotional needs being met? Are all of your emotional needs being met? And if you have to think about that for longer than a second, then the answer is no. It's that simple. Now, there's always communication is the most important part of a polyamorous relationship. Communication is the most important part of any relationship, followed only by sex. That's it. I mean, those are the two biggest factors in a relationship. And I know that people are going to get mad at me for saying that. And sex isn't the biggest factor in a relationship. It's a huge factor. So when you get sex and communication, two biggest factors in a relationship. And this is why I don't agree with the whole, saving it for marriage. Because that's just repressing yourself. Sexual compatibility is a huge thing. And, but that's another discussion. But, so, I mean, yes, communication is huge, but that's because it's important for everybody. I mean, communication is just important. You can't have any relationship without it. And yes, in a polyamorous relationship, it is extremely important, but no more so than in a relationship, a standard, traditional relationship. So, I see people fall back on that a lot. Well, it's all about communication. No, it's really not. It's about emotional well-being, mental well-being, physical well-being, spiritual well-being. It's about all of these things, and making sure that every party involved is emotionally healthy. And the fact of the matter is if you feel like you have to be in a relationship with multiple people, then you're not really emotionally healthy. Because something in you is telling you that you can't get what you need from just one person. So something there isn't right. That's not an insult. That's not to offend anybody. We all have our hiccups and our quirks and our hang-ups. That's fine. It's just recognizing it. It's important. Now, then there are the people who that are in these situations that recognize that you have to be emotionally detached. And they recognize that it's not about the relationship, it's about physical gratification. And those are the ones that do it right. They recognize that this is not a long-term thing. This is not a relationship. I don't want a relationship. I'm just gratifying myself. And that's okay. As long as they are honest and upfront about that with the people that they are with, this is not a relationship. We do not have a future past our physical needs. We are, we're not going to get married. We're not going to settle down. This is what it is. Those are the ones that end up being successful, open relationships, because there is no expectation of emotion. There is no expectation of attachment. So everybody is free to come and go as they will. But that's not a relationship. So there are two sides to that. Now, it happens every single time. They'll come in and, we'll start talking, and I'll ask everybody, well, how do you feel in the relationship? Oh, well, I'm perfectly fine with the relationship the way it is, and, I feel really comfortable with, everything how it is, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and it always goes that way for the group session. everybody is perfectly happy with the way things are. Okay, well then why are you here? And then we get into the individual sessions. Okay? And the guy's complaints will be, well, she's getting really clingy, and I don't understand what I can do to make her understand that she doesn't have to be this way. Or, I don't know how to broach the subject that I'm more interested in this person than I am in her, and I don't think that we should be so much in a relationship as so much of a friends with benefits, da 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 da. And my answer there is always, well, has she communicated her emotional needs? And did you line out what this was at the beginning? Well, in the beginning it was just me and her, and, then we opened up our relationship. Ah. So you saw something new and shiny, you wanted to play with that. So you asked, she said yes, and now she's upset because you are paying more attention to the new shiny than you are to the person who has stood by you through this. And now you're wanting to get rid of the person who has stood by you through this so that you can play with the new and shiny. And bring in another new and shiny. And that's the way it always goes. I mean, textbook. Every single time. I mean, I think I've had one group. One. Where it was the guy that was upset, like I said. And he came in, and it was actually because they started dating. The two girls, they started dating. They were both bisexual. And they decided that because they were a throuple, they wanted everybody to date everybody. And he was okay with it, and they were okay with it, so he was dating both of them, and they were dating each other, as well as him. And he thought it was going to be awesome, because threesomes, and all of this fun, and yay, kinky stuff. And then they started dating, and because they were compensating for the attention that they wanted to make sure that neither of them felt left out of, they ended up leaving him out. One person is always going to be more excluded. It never fails. And it's usually one way, but that doesn't mean that's the only way. But it always ends up being that way. And so, yeah, my daughter was asking me about it. And we were talking about it, and I was explaining this. And she was like, well, they've been in this relationship for about 6 months now. And, he was originally with her, and then, he wanted to be with her as well. So they agreed that it would be an open relationship. And now everybody's really unhappy, and I just don't know what advice I should give them. I said, honestly, the best advice that you can give them is they need to take care of their own emotional well-being above anybody else's. And that's true in any relationship. You cannot be in a relationship without taking care of your own emotional well-being first. If you are unhappy, your partner is going to be unhappy. And you see this all the time with couples, because when you become so in tune with somebody, even if you're not a natural empath, once you are in a relationship and you've come to that point, you become so in tune with them that you naturally, get their emotional feedback. It just happens. And it's that energy transference. So, when one person is completely miserable, both people are going to be miserable. So if you don't take care of your own emotional well-being in a relationship, then you're just dooming the relationship. So, and I'm always willing to admit when I'm wrong. So if any of you out there are in polyamorous relationships and you feel like I am wrong, I will give you this invitation. Message me, let me know, and we'll set up a session for you and your relationship. However many are there. I'll block out a whole day. We'll do it via video. It'll be the group, and then one right after the other, each one of you. That's my offer. If I am wrong, I am absolutely willing to admit it. But you have to prove it. So if there's a way to do this healthily, where nobody feels left out of anything, where everybody is completely emotionally healthy, and everybody is okay, and nobody feels, any kind of way, I'm absolutely willing to be, taught something new. So that's my offer. Until then, my belief stands. I haven't met the group yet that has been able to prove me wrong in this. And like I said, there will be no charge. It'll be free. So yeah, I mean, that was kind of my input on it, and I just kind of wanted to get on here and talk about it. I mean, I know it's not a huge thing. It doesn't really have a whole lot to do with, building up a future, in your relationship. It's not the standard relationship talk, but it's something that I thought was interesting, especially for those that are in, throuple situations, or, swinging situations, or, the open relationship, polyamory, all of that. And I understand that there is a difference between all of them, and I understand that there are nuances to all of it, and I understand that, each situation is different, and every person is different. But for each situation, I can tell you that there is always going to be something that makes it not work. And usually it has to do with emotion. The swinging is one of those things. It's the whole partner swapping thing. And in my view, that's just the go ahead to cheat. In my opinion, and again, speaking as from personal experience, if you have to sleep with somebody else, and somebody else's partner, I mean, think about the mental implications of that. You're literally saying that you have to sleep with somebody else's partner in order to get off. Which means, one, you have to feel like you have control over another person's partner, or you have some kind of one-up on this other person. Or you need to feel like, you have the go-ahead to sleep with whoever you want. I'm sorry, I just don't see it. And, I hear a lot of times, well, it was to spice up our marriage. Do you know that there are literally so many different things to do as far as sexual activities between two people that no one couple could accomplish all of them in their lifespan? I mean, from the time of sexual maturity to end of life. And I'm not even just talking about, where you stop wanting to have sex in your life. I'm talking about end of life. No couple could accomplish all of them. There should never be a reason to be bored. I am sorry, but there are so many different things to do. I mean, we're talking positions, we're talking activities, we're talking all kinds of different things to try. There should never be a reason why you are bored. If you are bored, it is because you lack imagination, and you lack the effort. I am sorry. I need to go sleep with other people because I'm bored. You're lame. You're lame. That is a lame excuse. That means I really don't want to put in the effort to be satisfied with my partner anymore, so I'm just going to go sleep with other people. No. 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 If sleeping with other people is part of your sexual fantasy, that's one thing. That's something to be honest about. This is a sexual fantasy. This is something that is hardwired into me to have my wife watch me with another person and then later join in. And usually it's women, to have my husband watch me with another male and then join in because it's, they want to feel the possessiveness of the man they're with. It's a whole thing. But I see the I'm bored, and it was to spice up our sex life. That's lazy. That's lazy. There are so many things to do, there should never be a reason to be bored. If you turn to that just to spice up your sex life, it's because you are unimaginative. And it is always the man who comes up with it. Not always. Sometimes it's women too, and it's because they saw someone new and shiny. And they're never honest about it. So, that's my thoughts on that, obviously. But as far as the whole polyamory thing, you know, swinging is a completely different thing from the polyamorous relationship, from the throuple and that kind of thing. So it really doesn't lump in. So I can't really say the same things about it. But I mean, and polyamory is done for completely different reasons. Polyamory is done out of, well, the male desire to again, it's that base instinct. And that's how the male justified is. It's the base instinct, and I don't want to just be tied to one woman, and I want to be able to share my love. You can share love without sharing sexual intimacy. I mean, hell, you can have soulmates that that have no romantic involvement. So why do you need to be romantically involved with more than one person in order to share love? It doesn't make sense. It comes back to sex. It really does. And the want to have sex with multiple people. So, and I know that that's going to piss a lot of people off. I'm sorry. But it's true. And a lot of times, most of the time, women do it because they want to please their partner. There are very few women who are actually interested in open relationships. That doesn't mean there aren't any, because obviously there's always exceptions to the rule. 9 times out of 10, it's not the woman's idea. And that's why you don't see, the thruples with, 2 guys and 1 girl. And part of that too is because, and I've seen this again, guys don't want to share. That's genetic, instinctual. That possessive streak is there by design, and that's not a bad thing. It's not a toxic thing or anything like that. That's just what men are, and that's okay. That's how we're designed. And so, and I've heard it too, where the girls come in for our one-on-one, and she's like, well, I'm just feeling kind of left out. And, I brought up at one point that I kind of thought that it might be cool to bring another guy in, and then maybe I wouldn't, feel so left out, and da-da-da-da-da. And, of course, that's not the fix to the problem. The fix to the problem is she needs to be open about her feelings, and she needs to take care of her own emotional well-being, and solve the problem at hand of her emotional needs not being met by this person before she brings in another party. But that's aside the point. But she brings this up anyway, and the guy will always shut it down. No, I'm not comfortable with that. Or he'll say he is comfortable with it and he is okay with it, but I had so he said he was okay with it. She brought another guy in, and when they went on their first, she was completely honest. She told him, hey, we're going on our first date on this Friday, and she went on the date, and they hit it off. And, she tried to call him the next day to tell him about it. And he wouldn't answer her calls for a week. And his answer to her when she asked him why, well, I thought you would be busy. Like, can you get more passive aggressive? Really? I thought you would be busy. Nice. Yeah. So yeah, that's how it happens. So, there is no amount of communication that, ever eliminates human emotion. It just illuminates what's going on. And you can have all the communication in the world, but that doesn't mean that it's going to work. The communication doesn't change the way you feel. And the communication doesn't change the fact that one person is always going to have more of a connection with one person than the other, because of viewpoints, beliefs, sexual compatibility, how they were raised, the things they have in common, sexual attraction. All of these different things play into it. And no one connection can be replicated. So of course there's always going to be one with more of a connection than the other. So, like I said, I'm going to go ahead and stop this there because, that's just what it is. But, that's essentially what I told my kid, as we're standing in the kitchen making dinner, having this conversation. But, like I said, if any of you think that you can prove me wrong, I am absolutely willing to listen. And I am absolutely willing to admit and get on here and admit when I am wrong. And of course, keeping all of your information completely confidential, I will do so. I'll admit when I'm wrong. But you have to be open to the session. It's 1 hour for the group and 1 hour for each individual involved in the relationship. So let me know. Send me a message or, just comment your name and I'll PM you. But if you're not willing to have the session, don't do it. Don't put yourself there. Put up or shut up. Anyway, it's good to be back, guys. Thanks for bearing with me, and I'll be back soon. I don't know. Maybe I'll talk about swingers next time. I don't know. Probably not.